The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Monday, the 4th of April, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,215.51 an ounce, silver $14.96 an ounce, Texas crude $36.79 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 418 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1968. African-American U.S. civil rights activist and minister Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. He was shot while standing on the balcony at the Lorraine Motel where he and his team of civil rights activists were staying at. A circuit court of Shelby County, Tennessee, 13th Judicial District at Memphis in December of 1999 found that unspecified U.S. government agencies were complicit and guilty in the assassination. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and pronounced dead. Today in history. In recent news, New York Democratic Senator Charles Schumer called on the Federal Department of Justice and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to investigate a gun that appears to look like an iPhone. The manufacturer, Ideal Conceal, said that the government's concern over the weapon is misplaced. CEO Kirk Gilberg said that the gun is expected to be ready for market later in the year. Images of the weapon on the company's Facebook page show what appears to be a regular smartphone case. However, it's just not any case since this one opens up into a .38 caliber handgun. List price is expected to be around $395 US. Gilberg, who has a concealed carry license himself, says he came up with the idea for the gun after a young child in a restaurant caught a glimpse of his more obvious weapon and pointed it out in public. Schumer is arguing that the gun, which appears like an everyday item, could violate federal law, which is why he requested today that the Justice Department and the ATF investigate. A small fire today forced the evacuation of the Internal Revenue Service's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Apparently, the building was closed around 2:45 in the afternoon due to electrical issues concerning the heating and air conditioning systems. Of the 2,000 people or so who work in the building, many had already left before the fire started around 3:30 when it was reported. The small fire, which was apparently contained to only one room in the basement, was in fact related to electrical issues, though the direct cause is still under investigation. Luckily, the IRS assured the public that tax returns are not processed at this particular building and will thus have no effect on tax return processing. There were no reported injuries. This is Rick Rohde with your lowdown for April 4th, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I have a joke for you. Okay. The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
I thought you'd see it coming. The moment you comes with the food.
Bitcoin is immune from attack, or almost completely. With Bitcoin, you actually gain far more from using the computer power to generate Bitcoin.
There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear. There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast if it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Crypto Show, a show about disruptive technology, currency, and liberty, with a pinch of stick in it to the man. As always, we come to you live from the real heart of the resistance in Austin, Texas, deep beneath the Chase Bank, with a stack of Bitcoin miners at our back, undermining the bank and the man. We bring to you the latest info from those hacking away at the digital revolution and having some fun while we do it. Stop dancing, Chris.
But it is all that my soul knows how to do. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Crypto Show, and it is April 6, 2016, a Wednesday, here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you, as always, by our sponsors, Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And this will be my last show. I'm going to be signing off because apparently Danny doesn't need me anymore. First he replaces my intro, then God knows what. He's just going to replace me entirely with some machine that a McDonald's franchise sold and got repurposed to replace me.
It's a ChrisBot.
It's a ChrisBot. And that's what happens when you ask for wages above the market rate. when I asked for getting paid anything for this show, Danny was like, you know what? We're going to have to replace you with a robot. No, I guess I'll stick around until he does replace me with a robot. It'll have to be right here in front of me, talking to me, telling me to scram or it's going to call the cops before I leave this place. Darn it. And hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Well, on a more serious note, I think.
Oh, good for you.
Thanks. Our guest, we had two guests this evening, one of whom is still going to join us almost certainly come the second hour at 9:00 here on the Crypto Show. Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project, right? She's still with that group, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And she is the former head of the Libertarian Party here in actually this room here in Austin, Texas. The Libertarian Party used to be in our studios right here. And she did that for many years. So we've known her for many years, and she's a great woman. Diehard libertarian, a diehard cannabis legalization supporter, and a diehard other cannabis other thing too. I won't finish that thought. You can finish it for me for yourself. So she's going to be on to talk about. If you haven't noticed, it is 420 month. It is the fourth month, April, and lots going on this month concerning cannabis legalization. Or just cannabis enjoyment, and that includes Eeyore's birthday. There's probably going to be, I haven't confirmed it, but it happens every year. There's going to be another, what's Bob Marley's son? The one that comes every year?
Ziggy?
Yeah, I think it's Ziggy Marley. There's going to be another Ziggy Marley Fest at Auditorium Shores, I'm sure, this year. And that's a big, basically, Rastafari cannabis celebration. And there's going to be a new brewery opening up here in town on 420. And they're kind of famous not just for being a really good craft beer, but they have commercials on YouTube about how to turn their beer cans into like bongs and stuff. It's pretty cute.
We're also going to be having Snoop Dogg on.
And we're going to be having Snoop Doggy Dogg.
Just kidding. That's a late April Fool's joke.
What? So. 5 days late, no less.
So I was a little high. No, just kidding.
You got me a little excited there. Well, don't do that to me.
Well, you know how stoners stop at a stoplight really late? Well, they tell April Fool's.
Oh, your April Fool's jokes are a little late. That reminds me of a meme. I probably told it to you already, but I'll say it on air. It's a meme I saw on Facebook. It's a picture of Bernie Sanders, and it says, what is it? Hold on. Socialist jokes aren't free unless everyone gets them. Is that how it went? No, socialist jokes aren't funny unless everyone gets them. And, you can kind of get it, right? I totally ruined that one. But what is this? I think it's Sweetwater Brewing Company. Yeah, Sweetwater Brewing Company, I'm pretty sure, is coming to Austin, Texas. On April 20th, they're having their opening, shebang, and it's going to be off Metric Boulevard. And I'm pretty excited because I've got some friends who live right over there, and it should be just a really fun time. So check that out. Austin.
How far away is that
from here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Not very. It's like 5 miles.
Can you tell me in kilometers? It's Metric Boulevard.
Oh, I get it. Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little slow today. Man, my brain, I cannot get it going. But I'm going to get it going here soon. How, you ask? With some tangy tangerine. I've got a big jug of water. Maybe you can hear it right here. Not that kind of water. That's not that kind of jug of water for that kind of thing. But it's a full tangy tangerine and pollen burst to give me some energy. So bear with me as I hopefully can become revitalized with the help of Tangy Tangerine, available at Brave New Books. Well, our first guest unfortunately can't make it. Our first guest was going to be Tatiana Moroz, a singer-songwriter and libertarian and Bitcoin activist.
We can only blame it on, the month of April.
Although I hear for her every month is the month of April. So I don't know. That's just what I heard. Don't quote me on that. But I'm sure we'll have her on again. Is she in town? How long is she in town for?
I don't know. I think we'll be catching up with her at the Libertarian Convention this weekend.
And is that here in town?
San Antonio.
Oh, San Antonio. Yeah. And do you know anything about it? Who are the big speakers? Or
Gary Johnson, McAfee, and I don't know, some other dude. And what's his name? Austin the Peter.
Oh, something. My goodness.
Austin Peterhead or something.
I will refrain from expressing my extreme displeasure with that guy. Oh, wait, did I just do it by saying so? Oh, my bad. I try not to get personal about disagreements I have with people, but there's some people where it's not just disagreements. It's like major character flaws and questionable libertarian ethics. But whatever. I'm sure it's going to be a great conference. Other good speakers there. So if you can make it, check it out. San Antonio's not that far from Austin.
It's the alternative to Trump, unless you just like that wall and hope that it gets paid for by remittance.
Yeah, indeed. And that's a good transition. So we're going to try and do something we haven't done in a little while and just talk it out, me and Danny, for the first hour. It's terrifying, I know. And I'm sure you're all wondering, like, wait, you guys, like, you might be on the radio, but we all know secretly that you guys can't carry a conversation or a topic for more than a minute. Well, Mom, and Dad, I'm going to prove you wrong. Okay. Cause, I know you've never had faith in me, but just watch. So speaking of topics for discussion, briefly, since Danny brought it up, we should talk about Donald Trump, which I know it's like beating a dead horse. Everyone seems to talk about it. I'm not a particular fan of Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of any of the candidates. I'm probably least a fan of Bernie Sanders, since he is a full-blown socialist, and he has this veneer of genuine old guy who's just out to help the common man, which I don't believe for a second. But even if he is, he's wanting to help the common man through good intentions that pave the way to hell, as the old saying goes. And no matter how good his intentions are, his policies are wrong. Not just morally wrong, which they are, but they are wrong because they will not work. They will end in disaster. They will carry us further and further down the road to socialism, or at least some similar brand of authoritarianism, central planning, and state control. And that is never a good thing. Even from
his central plan is he's going to get the Mexicans to pay for it
through taxation,
through remittance. There, what is it? The $25 billion of remittance that goes through Mexico. He's going to stop that.
Or you mean Trump?
Yeah,
Trump. Sorry, I was getting back to Trump. I was talking about Bernie for a second.
Oh,
but no, you're right. I mean, that's such a ridiculous idea. I mean, first of all, building a wall I mean, Danny, you remember this. We've talked about this before. What did Ron Paul say, Danny, back in, I think it was 2012, about the idea of a wall? What was its real purpose?
Maybe it's to keep you in.
Exactly. If Danny can get that, surely the rest of you fools can. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, that was such an incredible point that he brought up. And I feel like when Ron Paul did bring that up in the debates back in 2012, I think it might never even have occurred to me, which is why it was perhaps so shocking. And he even compared it to the Soviet Union, which is exactly what happened. The Soviet Union, which admittedly, kind of from the get-go was very totalitarian. It was a much more overnight revolution of centrally planned, authoritarian government. And ours is more gradual and progressive, so to speak. But, it happened over there. They built the Berlin Wall to keep people in. They had tight border controls to keep people in. You had to get permission to go from one part of the Soviet Union to another. And I don't even mean just between countries, member countries of the Soviet Union. I mean between different parts of Russia. You had to have certain papers, you had to have certain approvals just to go on vacation, just to visit your aunt, depending on how far you went and where you were going and all that. And so that's where it's kind of heading in this country. And one step in that direction is building that wall. Because, once they get the borders completely locked down, well, then they're going to start locking down the borders between states, just like they already partially do with states that are on, the path from California or Colorado. Speaking of cannabis, it all ties in. They have checkpoints, and they'll have cops just waiting at certain major arteries, just waiting for people to do something wrong, to pull them over as an excuse to search their cars for a plant that helps people. And of course, typically a lot of times they won't even use legal cause to search your vehicle. And of course, the checkpoints are constitutionally very dubious. But we'll talk more about that, and I'll get back to remittances on the other side. So stay tuned.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. I'm sick of people being victimized by criminal cops. Psychopathic predators terrorizing neighborhood blocks. Equipped with pepper spray, mace, cuffs, tasers, and glocks. They like Serial killers acting out subliminal thoughts. Forget what you taught. These cops have got a license to kill. Witness intimidation means that they can use it at will. Code of silence means that the pigs will never let out a squeal. And if they go to court, they know the judge will make them a deal. For real. That's why they stopping me, locking me up and stopping me, confiscating my property, talking to my democracy.
All right. Welcome back to the Crypto Show. My name is Droidbot 3000. I am the new host of the Crypto Show. I am replacing the old robot, Chris Crypto 2000.
I don't think they make a robot that big yet, do they?
Probably not. Well, with advancing technology and ever smaller microchips, they don't need to.
There you go.
So it's just a waste of space, much as my mother refers to me. No, she doesn't. Well, not much. No, but I'm Chris. I'm back, your other host of the Crypto Show. I have not been replaced by robot. I was just kidding for those who maybe took me too seriously. I'm sometimes bad about, like, I forget that, like, my dry humor is not necessarily obvious, in part because I don't always give cues that I'm joking. And then my voice can be kind of flat sometimes. So I think, like,
there's also the part about it not being funny.
Then it's not funny. So you think, well, it's not funny. Like, that was a terrible joke if it was one, therefore it must not have been a joke. Oh, therefore he's telling the truth. Well, oh my gosh, is he leaving? And Rick Rohde, our producer, was celebrating in the background. I could hear him.
Yeah, he was playing that song, Celebrate, and everything.
No, I'm just kidding. But I like Rick. He's great. I hope we have a long relationship here at the show. Anyway, Danny's getting antsy. He's like, get to talking about the important stuff, and he's right. He's
Remittances.
So,
should I call someone in Mexico real quick and just see if I can send them some Bitcoin and have them send it back to me within 10 minutes, and maybe send kind of a video or something over to Don and let him know that the wall is not stopping remittance.
Do it. We should. I mean, that's the thing. Is like, so first of all, the wall. I mean, I'm sure people will find a way to dig under it. That's what they did with that's what they've already done with some of the fencing or walls that already exist, right?
Yeah.
I mean, easy.
Has he never heard of planes? They kind of go like over walls.
Yeah. And that's a good point too.
How tall is this wall going to be?
If they can smuggle, 100 kilos of cocaine in some of these like chartered planes or whatever, they can easily smuggle people. And I'm not saying that I envy people doing that, because it would be very terrifying and uncomfortable and potentially dangerous. But people will find a way across, or they'll burrow holes inside the wall itself.
Whereas we found out when we went across the border, the only people that have a hard time getting back in is Americans.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right.
And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe once you leave, you shouldn't come back, considering the way it's going here. But so with the wall and then the remittances, and I just want to say before commenting on remittances, Danny, are we harmed or do we benefit from trade with Mexico?
I would imagine we benefit.
Do we benefit from Mexicans coming over here and laboring?
Well, have you ever tried to hire people for certain jobs? It ain't happening. That's who's doing it.
Yeah.
Period.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, and the other guys won't show up.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, I work in construction. I know. I have the gringos. I have to go pick them up personally, and sometimes they won't even answer the door.
Yeah.
If I gave them too much money and they bought too much beer, I mean, they're just not going to come to work. Period.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was fishing for. It's exactly true. We benefit from trade with Mexico. We benefit from their labor. And the thing is, like, it's like Danny says, the labor they take is labor that a lot of Americans simply don't want to do, period. Or they don't want to do it at the wages that the Mexicans will offer. But and that's fine, because here's the thing. If they don't want to do it, that's their choice. And, maybe they sit on the welfare rolls, or maybe they just do nothing, or maybe they find a better paying job. But a lot of these Mexicans, the wages they get here are, even at those low wage rates, significantly better than what they can often get in Mexico, especially for the low skilled, uneducated workers. But a lot of the Mexicans who come over are actually either have some skills to begin with or acquire them. And you'll see them, making actually good money over the years, learning how to do more advanced construction stuff, or maybe they start a business. And so it's not just...
Well, most of them are legal anyway. So really, I mean, the ones that are running the crews, you really don't know if the guy that they just hired, because, the guy that leads the crew is the one that works for you. And he's the one you hire. He has, all of the papers, as, brand new trucks and all of that good stuff. You can't really keep track of everybody that he's hired for his crew, because he's the contractor or subcontractor.
That's a good point.
And everyone else that works under him is, may or may not be. So.
Right. And, he might have started out as an illegal. A lot of them did. And regardless, like, a lot of the people he hires are probably illegal. But guess what? Who cares? And think it like what Danny's implying too. What he's getting at is logistically, it would be really difficult and expensive to verify everybody. And
I wish that, what would really be cool to verify is verify them all back over there for 1 week. And when people start having to mow their own lawn, and do their own work, we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see if they miss them or not.
We'll see if they start complaining about the Mexicans coming over. And the thing is, when the Mexicans do work,
it's not just Mexicans. I mean, it's people from South America and from all around the world. And just like the H-1B1, whatever visas,
for the
those
skilled
people,
workers.
when they come over, if they can only work for whoever it is that brought them over.
Yeah.
They can't switch jobs.
Yeah.
So
they have to get that
They're in
renewed.
servitude. Yeah.
I had
they
a friend.
can only work for this company.
Yeah.
It's like the company store or something. They're basically slaves.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I have a friend from China who, luckily at this point, he married an American. He's got 2 kids, but he was working for this company, and the company loved him and treated him well. Gave him good money. Although a lot of the foreigners who come over under the skilled labor visas still make less than the average American. And I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong, but or that it isn't maybe a price to pay for being brought over, because it is expensive for the companies to bring them over, but they have to work for the same company. It's really expensive for those companies to bring them over, vouch for them, do the paperwork, and hire them. And then they have to renew that. And I think there's even a lottery process, even if the company is willing. It's not a guarantee, I think, after certain, the first cycle, even if the company wants to keep them. I think that was the case with my friend. So, but another point, and I want to specifically speak to remittances. When the foreigners come over here, and it's really any of them, like Danny was saying, whether skilled or unskilled, but when they come over here and do jobs for less that Americans wouldn't do, first they're still creating wealth that trickles down to everybody else. They're still building things. They're still building houses. They're still wiring, electrical wiring. They're still doing things that creates wealth that then creates capital and jobs that then indirectly puts other people to work, if that makes sense. So it's not like it's not the giant sucking sound that what's his name, Perot called it. I mean, he was referring to NAFTA specifically, but there's not a giant sucking sound. It's we benefit from their labor. And then the remittances, first off, those remittances are money that they earned legitimately. Whether legal or illegal is immaterial. And that's a whole other can of worms too, because it's like, why do we have a central federal government deciding what 300 million people, 50 states, and thousands of municipalities can do with regard to immigration? In an anarchist world or a much less statist world, local governments, local communities, et cetera, would decide whether immigrants could come in. And that's
what
the way
that'll
it should
do
be.
for if Trump is able to implement this remittance block or whatever to build the wall. Just think what that'll do for Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin, because that'll be the new tool that everyone will use.
That's a good point. It'll boost the value of Bitcoin. It could lower the value of the dollar simultaneously,
right? Because
one of the things that makes the dollar worth anything is that it is this international trade money. And when you shut down an avenue of international trade like remittances,
it's no longer the world reserve currency, is it?
Or it's slowly becoming not the reserve currency.
Well, if it can't be used for remittance around the world, then obviously it's not a world reserve currency.
Once that happens, yeah, absolutely. And so that just
way to destroy the dollar, Don.
I know. Good job, Trump. Well, let's talk more about that and some other stuff on the other side.
India's snake charmers face dangers every day, but that's nothing compared to the wrath they face from animal rights activists. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in just a moment to tell you why 1,000 snake handlers have taken to the streets to protest.
Your search engine is watching you, recording all your searches and creating a massive database of your personal information. That's creepy, but it doesn't have to be that way. Startpage.com is the world's most private search engine. Startpage doesn't store your IP address, make a record of your searches, or use tracking cookies, and they're third-party certified. If you don't like Big Brother spying on you, start over with Startpage. Great search results and total privacy. Startpage.com, the world's most private search engine.
The Snake Charmers Federation of India is a coalition of thousands fighting for the right to perform street shows with live snakes. I kid you not. An amazing 800,000 Indians make a living from their craft, which is handed down from father to son. When India passed a Wildlife Protection Act that outlaws the ancient practice of snake charming, 1,000 snake handlers turned out to protest. About 20,000 people are now in jail for defying the ban. But it turns out the charmers aren't quite as brave as they let on. Animal rights activists say they often sew snakes' mouths shut, remove their fangs, or destroy their venom glands to make them harmless and defenseless. Ack, that's not charming at all. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Live Free Speech Radio. logosradionetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time. Take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader?
Hurry, Danny, hurry. Oh my God. Oh, no. Do you have the camera set up? Okay, good. No. Thank God no one saw that. Well, I had to. My eyes are, it's going dark. My eyes are singed. My retina burned after seeing that. Anyway, welcome back to the Crypto Show on this lovely Wednesday, April 6th, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books, where you can get your Tangy Tangerine and Pollen Burst energy drinks, which I'm drinking right now to get me through this long trek of a show. And don't forget Hill Country Home Improvements for all your roofing needs. They accept Bitcoin. They prefer Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin.com, of course.
Bitcoin.com.
They're running our ads over there, so we're pushing them over here. Definitely, if you want to learn something about Bitcoin and you don't know anything, go to Bitcoin.com. There's some pretty good sources.
That's the place to go. That's Roger Ver's site. Bitcoin Jesus himself started that site. It's his. Lots of great resources, an awesome forum. They have contests for submitting Bitcoin-related material, whether I think it was like a poem recently.
Yeah. And we're also fixing to start doing some stuff with, CryptoCompare.com as well. So
CryptoCompare.com.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. Well, speaking of Bitcoin, we were talking about the big boost that Bitcoin would receive from the likes of Donald Trump stopping remittance payments from immigrant workers here in the United States to their home countries. Obviously, the bulk of this Latin America and the bulk of that Mexico. It's just crazy nonsense. Those people earn their money fairly and honestly through hard work.
Or roadside robbery.
Or
oh no, that's the Mexican military. Whole different story.
Whole different story. That happens, and that's not fair or honest. They don't deserve that money, but that's just a small percentage of Mexicans who are in the military in Mexico. But the vast majority of the ones who are here, hard workers, good people, even start their own businesses, become legal. Not that it matters to me. And if you stop those remittance payments, you're asking for a handful of things. One, you're asking for the quick demise of the dollar, which, don't get me wrong, I want in a certain sense. Although, whether I want a gradual, orderly decline or a quick, sudden decline, that can have its own consequences. It would be nice to get rid of the dollar and fiat currencies and go back to decentralized free money, sound money like Bitcoin, gold and silver, etc. But, remittance payments being ended would give Bitcoin a boost, and that's not a bad thing. That's a positive. A negative, though, at least in the short term, because eventually people would switch to things like Bitcoin, and they already are doing that in Latin America and elsewhere, like in Argentina. But you would probably cause a lot of people to starve to death, or at least live in extreme misery, because a lot of those remittance payments go to help the poor families of immigrants who come here just make it day by day, to pay bills, to put food on the table. So Donald Trump wants to kill potentially millions of people across the world by ending remittance payments. And that's just unethical and wrong and evil. And, a lot of these remittance payments too, aside from being direct, I don't want to say subsidies, but being direct forms of paying for basic necessities in these countries for families of workers over here, they're also in general some of the only ways that these countries can get foreign currency, hard currency, as they say. Of course, it's relative, because the dollar is not exactly a hard currency when you compare it to Bitcoin or gold and silver. So indirectly, it's not just the immediate families who benefit from the remittances by these workers. It's the economies at large, because those economies have currencies that are debased even more extremely than our own, and they need access to foreign currency in order to at least have a reasonable exchange rate if they want foreign goods, or to get foreign goods at all. And so you're really depriving people by wanting to end that. Donald Trump, anyone who says Donald Trump knows business, Donald Trump, he knows how to make a good deal. Well, that's a lie. He's either an idiot or he's a shill. I'm sorry. And that's my opinion on it, because to advocate ending remittances is economically ridiculous. That would, forget the wall. If you end remittances, a lot of the Mexicans who come up here would just probably go back, or Latin Americans, because they can't.
Well, that's what the wall's for. This is to keep them here.
Okay, I see. Oh, and they keep their remittance money here. I see. Brilliant. But
it's not to keep them out. It's once they get here, we need to keep them here.
That makes sense. Even though that seems to go against what the Republican Party platform says. Anyway, there's a lot of good, well-meaning and intelligent people who support Trump. I don't support any of them, so I'm not exactly picking Trump out, singling him out. If there's anyone I would single out, it's Bernie Sanders. I mean, that's just crazy. Like, that's crazy train. Like, you're going off the rails, off the cliff into economic hell.
Anybody want a pony?
But the one person I do support is Vermin Supreme, because he'll give us all ponies. But
and free toothbrushes.
Oh, and free toothbrushes. I could use one of those for my one tooth remaining. So yeah, but the one benefit, I guess, and forget even that scenario, but the one thing that would render that obsolete is Bitcoin. And that's why we've had guests on like Jose Rodriguez of Bitso, and many other people who live and work in Latin America and are involved in Bitcoin exchanges, or Bitcoin entities that facilitate trade and remittance payments in Bitcoin. And one thing with Bitcoin, Danny, how would they stop Bitcoin?
Yeah, good luck.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not saying there are things they couldn't do to slow it down or to make certain avenues of unavailable.
They could make it illegal.
Like a lot of good that did, right? For other things they made illegal, right?
Yeah, like would stop it just like it did marijuana or
murder or alcohol during Prohibition. Exactly. So, Bitcoin luckily exists because, and that's the thing too, is if it weren't for Bitcoin, the government has its hands so deeply in the banking system these days, especially post 9/11, obviously, where they can just seize your bank account just because they don't like the amounts that you're putting in. Maybe you run an all cash but legitimate business. And when I say legitimate in the eyes of the government, in other words, you're paying your taxes. And we'll get to a story about that too, about the Panama Papers coming up and probably in the next segment. But the fact that they could even stop these remittance payments, or that it would even be an issue, or talked about, or considered.
Well, it would be selective though. It wouldn't be for the rich and the famous people in Panama. It would just be for poor people that are trying to send money to their family.
That's a really good point, Danny. And that's the biggest thing you can get out of any of things like this is when Donald Trump or whoever talks about closing tax loopholes or stopping remittances, it's always going to be
selective
for the 99%, so to speak. Whereas the 1%, and it's not just that they're rich, it's that they're rich and use their political pool to make themselves richer, or they got rich in the first place through political pool. It's through their friends.
All animals are created equal.
Except the pigs.
Right.
Exactly. That's good. And so that's the thing is it's meant to make everyone think that it's all fair and we're people are being helped by stopping economic trade or by taxing people to death. In reality, it's just to enslave the common man and to keep the rich doing whatever they want to do. And I don't care if the rich do whatever they want to do, but they're rigging the system so that none of the rest of us can do it. And no, this isn't a call for more government, so let's clamp the hands of the rich with more government. Let's pass the laws, Bernie. This is a call for less government because that's what these rich and powerful people use to screw us. They don't just it's not like they have $100 million and magically they get these, telekinetic powers to make us, to screw us. No, because they still have to earn their money or to keep it. They still have to put themselves forth in the market vote, the voluntary market vote of dollars by the average person, and persuade people to buy their products. But the way they rig the game is through the government, getting the government to force people to do what they wouldn't otherwise do through the threat of violence. That's it, period. So Bernie Sanders is a violent man. He's calling for violence. Donald Trump is calling for violence. And not just violence, but illegitimate, immoral, unprovoked violence that, even though it's in the name of the common man, is going to hurt the common man. And if people would just wake up and get that, well, we'd have a better world.
I'm pretty sure I can take Bernie.
I can take Trump. I got him. Let's do it. A WWE fight next time on the Crypto Show.
Chip in my babies, stay out of our lives. Don't want no shackles. Don't want no shackles on me.
Don't want no shackles. Don't want no shackles. Welcome back to the Crypto Show, guys. Here on this lovely April 6, 2016, a Wednesday here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. Well, we were just talking about Donald Trump.
They're bringing crime.
They're bringing crime.
They're bringing drugs.
They're bringing drugs.
Cost me $3.
What did he say?
Cost me $3.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Trump, and he always like
the drugs are $3 apparently.
Oh, that's some cheap drugs, man. Yeah. Where do I go for those? And and it's such a silly point. They're bringing crime. Like now, I can kind of
they're rapists.
Look, I can kind of see the argument with. Oops, there we go. Sorry, almost lost myself there. With the whole Syrian refugee thing, that's a very complicated issue. I can see the point being made that when you uproot a large population who is already in a war-torn area and transplant them into a completely different culture and they're destitute, you might on statistically see an upsurge in crime. It doesn't say anything about the culture or religion or ethnic identity of those people. You take anybody and you uproot them from a war-torn area and then you just transplant them into another society and just kind of drop them there. You're probably gonna get desperate people. You're gonna get crimes committed just from small percentages of the population. And of course you get with immigrants, a small percentage are criminals. That's true. But no, not because they're illegal and they pass here illegally and that makes them a criminal. That's stupid. Yes, some of them will be rapists, some of them will be murderers, but it's a small percentage of people.
Probably.
Definitely. Trump. And that's and honestly, the more welcoming you are, the more you make it easy for people to freely associate and cross the border and work, you're going to have less crime, no matter where they're from. And so if anything, by making it difficult for them, by making them work with coyotes who, a lot of those coyotes are probably drug dealers themselves. And not there's anything wrong with drugs per se.
Well, look at all the gringos that we met that snuck into Mexico and that are over there working now.
Yeah, I know, right?
Literally.
Yeah, I mean Acapulco, and and I'm not advocating drugs when I say that. What I'm saying is drugs should be legal. It's a right for people to freely transact. But what I'm saying is when you make it really tough for people to immigrate here, you're pushing them into the darker parts of society naturally. Not everybody, but it's not. Don't be surprised when you do see maybe a little bit of an increase in that. But anyway, that's kind of besides the point. My point is the crime alleged by Trump concerning immigrants is so small. It's most people who are immigrating here are not committing these crimes. Crimes happen amongst every population. It's a fallacy. They're trying to paint everybody as this potential criminal, murderer, rapist, thief, and it's nonsense. And it's just propaganda. The people who come over here, they want to work. Of course, there are some people who are lazy or going to welfare, but they by and large want to work. I've known, immigrant Mexicans my whole life. They are hardworking, normal people by and large. So it's just total nonsense. And again, it's like I think Bastiat said, when goods and soldiers don't cross borders, when goods and workers don't cross borders, soldiers will. In other words, when you limit free trade among countries, and that includes labor, you necessarily drive a wedge between those countries politically and socially, and that creates greater conditions for the potential for war.
I think one of the biggest drug crimes I noticed when we were down in Acapulco is that everybody was complaining about the weed not being very good. Apparently, they're sending all the good weed here, and they leave all the garbage there.
I believe it.
Everybody was complaining about they couldn't find good weed.
So. It makes sense, yeah. And I even saw some down there, and it definitely wasn't very good from the glimpse I got of someone else's. But yeah,
is that with air quotes? Someone else's, you know what I'm saying? No, but yeah, I don't know. It's just total nonsense, this whole immigration, the take that these guys have on immigration. And it's almost a false dichotomy anyway, because a centralized authority should not be determining immigration for the vast country of the United States. It makes no sense. So and because that happens, you run into thorny issues of, well, what do we do with 100,000 Syrian immigrants? And the thing is, it's not so simple as to say turn them away. It's not so simple as to say let them come, because to some extent you're bringing them into places who want them, and to some extent you're bringing them into places who don't want them, because it's centrally planned, and therefore everyone falls into whatever that decision is made by the central authority. But anyway, still in the segment, let's get into another quick topic: the Panama Papers. Are those rolling papers or?
We can't get our minds off of cannabis because it's cannabis month. Well, Danny, because I talked to him. Whoa, this is a strange and unusual visit. We might have to stop.
Awesome.
Oh, really?
Awesome.
Are my eyes seeing things? Am I hallucinating?
All right.
Do you want to?
Yes.
Oh, well, heck
Jump
yeah.
on.
Okay, listen, ladies and gentlemen, forget everything I just said. It's all nonsense. It all pales in comparison to someone who just walked in the door randomly. Looks like he has a new haircut. I love it.
He's carrying a submachine gun, 3D printed.
Or exactly. And he's got a new 3D printer that fits in the palm of his hand. It's pretty incredible. Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed. Do you have like a wrestling?
Just uninvitedly barges into our studio.
I didn't have to barge.
Guns blazing.
This cave, man, the door was off the hinges. I just walked in.
All right.
I smelled something foul and thought I, maybe need to check on if there was a body in here or something.
No, that
was across the street, man.
No, that's my natural body odor. That when you smell that means I'm still alive.
That means it's working.
No, a couple of days ago, was it yesterday or the day before, they found the body on UT? Literally, right across the street from where we're at.
I just heard about that. That's right.
Oh, my goodness.
Near the Alumni Center.
Yeah, girl.
Guys, this is really cool. I haven't seen the studio since you guys.
How do you like it?
It's great.
Well, maybe if you paid us a visit more often.
I remember, Danny, you were saying you were going to redo this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks great, man.
He actually followed through on something for once. That's pretty amazing.
You made him get up in anger. Now he's walked off. It's just gonna be you.
No, Danny, please come back, baby. I didn't mean anything.
This is nice too.
I know.
Isn't that cool?
How long has this been like this?
For a few months now.
Wow.
A couple of months.
When was the last time you were on the show?
Gosh, I couldn't say. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you can't even remember it's been that long.
Are we still in Austin, Texas?
Well, I should hope so. And Cody Wilson back after a long trip on God knows what. Isn't even sure where he is. No, I'm just
Gosh,
kidding.
you guys. Every day is the same for me. So, I've been listening to GCN Radio Network lately. Alex Jones during the day, partners of this network, and then I've been listening to the Crypto Show at night. Sometimes Leland's show.
You should tell him that. He'll get a kick out of that.
I heard you guys, and I was like, you know what? I was driving around. I was about to go home, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna come by, see what's up.
Oh, that was
All
sweet,
right.
man. I wish you'd shown up. We had a little outing with Lynn Olbricht.
Oh, really?
The walk fundraiser, pub crawl fundraiser for Ross.
She told me that was happening. How did that go?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I got there late. I didn't get to see Lynn. She'd already left for home, but we stayed out pretty late. And some of your employees were there.
I saw her recently, and she recently did InfoWars as well.
I just watched that.
She did the nightly news recently, so she's been back in Texas for a little bit, I think.
She's speaking. She'll be speaking this weekend at the Libertarian Convention in San Antonio.
That's really awesome.
So capable, so flexible these days. She's quite a.
Where are we at with the thing?
Yeah, where are we at with the case?
What's my line?
The Black Cross thing.
Oh, that thing. Well, I'm. Oh, okay. Hi. I wasn't close enough to the mic. Was that it? No, I wasn't turned up enough. This wasn't
still,
me.
that still helps though. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Sorry, people in Radio Land. Well, there is a nonprofit that is right now. It's one of its big projects is supporting the appeal of Ross Ulbricht. So, I don't know. Lynn and I've talked about it.
I've actually used it.
She's comfortable talking about it. Danny is a donor, and it's called the American Black Cross.
So it's a fundraising apparatus?
It is a nonprofit. It is a public charity.
Okay.
It is dedicated to the eradication of the prison industrial complex, and
great goal.
It has located a how to say this? Anyway, it is dedicated to helping the American political prisoner.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great goal.
Yeah. Well, we're actually trying to define the American political prisoner as a charitable class that has been underserved in the United States. And, the response to this has been, America, political prisoners? You better believe it, brother. And there's no organization dedicated to pointing out, number one, who they are, and number two, helping them out.
I think, helping them out, of course, is number one, but a close second is pointing out the fact that there are political prisoners and why. Because like you said, people don't understand that, even America has political prisoners. They think, a land of the free, home of the brave, Constitution.
Yeah.
They assume that a political prisoner is impossible here.
That's right. What's so scary about this country is that they literally point at everything wrong around us and tell us that this is freedom, and that most of us eat that up. And even though we incarcerate, as I hear many times on this network, we incarcerate more people than anyone else in the rest of the world.
Combined.
Millions and millions of people live and are just the grist of, like, the ground up part of this prison industrial complex. And I'm not saying everyone in that system is themselves, by virtue of being in the system, a political prisoner.
Sure.
But I am saying that this system does in large part rely on, first, punishing the politically inconvenient citizen, especially the innovative one, people like Ross Ulbricht. And so we're dedicated to helping him in his appeal and helping
if you want to donate to Ross Ulbricht and have a tax write-off at the same time,
that's right.
Check into it.
If you'd actually like to contribute to the Ross Ulbricht appeal, you can contribute at blackcross.org.
Awesome. We'll be right back with Cody Wilson and Heather Fogg. welcome back to the second hour of the Crypto Show here on this lovely Wednesday, April 6th, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network. Brought to you as always by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And we're talking with Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed. We were just discussing his involvement in a new charity that specifically helps political prisoners. And Cody was just mentioning how unique this organization is, and it truly is, because it is specifically targeting and defining what a political prisoner is. And that's so crucially important.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I should say that there's a historical context to the Black Cross. This is not, novel in that there have always been confederations of anarchist Black Cross organizations, and this is the vein in which we're bringing this particular nonprofit into the world. But what we've seen is that old world or left anarchist Black Cross organization has never been approached in a kind of, look, I don't want to disparage any particular effort, okay? But when I see someone like Ross Ulbricht totally swallowed whole by the government, and then really not provided with, especially the first couple of years, not provided with the institutional support and movement support he needed, it just seemed that we were lacking a way to direct attention, and that toward his plight, and specifically defining his plight as a plight of state opprobrium, state oppression. And so that there needed to be an organization also that could encourage, in the formal white market system, that could encourage people to participate in a way that, tax deduction gets people
motivated to do things. Yeah.
So look, this is blending an approach, right? Because this is not a true old world, especially like 70s and 80s Black Cross model. We're attempting to define something like the American Red Cross with a 501c3. We're really trying to define and kind of get a legal definition of our nonprofit purpose, and actually get the government to recognize legally that no, there's a charitable class of American people that are political prisoners in this country that's never been recognized legally before in the context that we're talking about. Not that it's necessary, but that it is a useful mechanic that can eventually, I think, be a way of helping to prevent the tragedy of the next Ross Ulbricht and the one after him and the one after him.
Right.
Because they're just coming after our innovators so quickly now,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and how do you go about doing that? I mean, how do you go about, do you think you ever could get a legal definition or change of what a political prisoner is? Probably not.
Frankly, I've done it. I mean, the American Black Cross has 501c3 status. It's a public charity, and I'm sure at some point there will be an intense level of scrutiny, but we have done all the work, and I did all the work over the last year and a half to get the legal ducks in a row to be willing to go to court on it and say, no, this meets all of your operational tests and all of your, and basically get the precedent out there in a court saying, one public charitable class is the American political prisoner. I mean, that's what I want. That's really one of the things that this can yield. Maybe that's beneficial for future organizations as well.
And can you give us a quick rundown of what would make a political prisoner, like what that definition would be?
I mean, historically, you look at the Geneva definitions, you look at international law, and then I would say, especially in the American context, we narrow it down, and we can be idiosyncratic and have our own definitions. But I think first you try to conform to an international law idea of what a political prisoner is. So there's certain definitions like in these international treaties. And then we say, in these contexts, we look for things like, we'll have a committee, right? We'll have a committee that can determine these things and throw definitions. But like with Ross Ulbricht, overwhelming punishment, right? That didn't fit the crime, a sense of lack of disproportionality. Also because his crimes were related to activity that we can define easily as anti-state activity that was positioned and defined mostly in political terms. Doing what he did in political terms. It wasn't just that he shot a cop, now he's claiming political motivations. We're going to shy away from that. We're going to go toward people like the Barrett Browns of the world, people like Assange, people who are willing to be leakers, whistleblowers, or people who are willing to set up counter-state organizations and counter-state practices, and who are then punished almost specifically because of their political motivations. We all recall
as Ulbricht was explicitly by the judge, yeah.
We recall Ross's sentencing hearing where the judge said, look, I mean, it's dangerous when you think the government is the enemy, and I'm going to make you an example. Okay, well, Ross Ulbricht is now a political prisoner of the United States of America. So, I mean, it's just about creating that set of practices more than anything else. And then I'm happy to let it be recursive and evolve. Like, it's okay. I want, maybe even our movement eventually can kind of coalesce around this and say, this is a body of authority that helps locate who we agree to be important political prisoners.
I was listening to the interview you were talking about earlier with Lynn Ulbricht and David Knight today on InfoWars.
Yeah.
And she mentioned that the guy from the Silk Road 2 only got about 6 years.
Right.
I heard that. How is that?
Incredible,
the exact same thing that Ross has done.
It's just like they say about, when you're the pioneer, you get the arrows, man. You get the arrows. And this guy, the first guy to break through the glass, right? He got cut up. I mean, Ross got destroyed. And then the guy right in after him gets less than a decade. Incredible. And I got to think that alone, one of those things alone, gets him a new sentencing. Or at least,
you would think because it's such a similar case with such a disparate outcome.
It's the same stuff.
I mean,
Silk Road 2, I guess only had a sixth of the income or something. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll just make it down to like, well, how many millions of dollars were laundered? I mean,
well, that's like saying I killed somebody that only had $10 versus I killed a millionaire.
Well, right.
What's the difference?
Right. Especially like under the statutes that they convicted him, the conspiracy stuff. I've got to think that Ross has got a second win coming legally because of the way they mishandled and totally disproportionately treated everyone else related to the organization, and specifically targeted him because of his beliefs and the way that if he was not a libertarian about the Silk Road, if he hadn't expressed libertarian belief and had just been a kind of craven, manipulating charlatan, he wouldn't have gotten 2 life sentences.
Yeah.
And this is one of the particular signs that you can say, all right, now we know this person is a political prisoner in this country.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's clear as day. Well, I want to ask a kind of a related question. I do also want to get to your court issues and what's coming along with that. But for the moment, I want to bring in our other guest, Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project. In the next segment, we're going to focus more on her and what she's up to. But since this is such a related topic, it goes without saying, she works with the Marijuana Policy Project, has to do with cannabis legalization. Obviously, the Silk Road Ross Ulbricht. I mean, I don't need to spell it out. But I guess my question is, the political prisoner of Ross Ulbricht and the way you defined it, I think, is pretty clear, even though you just gave a concise, very brief, summation of what that is. But I'm concerned about the average, say, drug dealer or a guy in prison for drug possession, say. To me, they're political prisoners as well. Obviously, of a different caliber, say, of a Ross Ulbricht, because, Ross Ulbricht, his being a political prisoner is, sort of exponentially more. But, I mean, what do we do? What about like your average person who's in jail for something that shouldn't be a crime?
Yeah. I think this is, first of all, the best question to ask about organizations like this. One as well that I'm not as prepared to answer because I haven't really sat down on a lot of the law and our own internal policies about this yet. This is a very new organization. Our board has only met a few times, and we're only now just becoming kind of generally public about what we're doing. But I think it's the most important conversation to have. We've got to recognize, if not in the particulars of a particular drug dealer's case, we have to recognize that there are certain levels of activity, criminal activity, which are more politically impermissible than they are strictly criminally, like, I don't know, pest. I don't know what the right word to say here is. So yeah, I agree with you. Perhaps there are certain politically inconvenient crimes which are receiving, like in the drug war, that are receiving undue scrutiny. And how do we have different lines of programs in our organization, which if they can't choose to help a particular person's legal efforts, we can have a general kind of program which at least allows people access to clinicians, legal aid in the general sense, like helps onboard people toward resources. I mean, there's so many different ways to slice this.
Yeah.
And that at least is my instinct, that we can at least provide programmatic access and educational material and all other kinds of things. Networks of pro bono help that can at least help people, and they know that they can at least call on us for help, and we can help get them the help that they need, even if we can't dedicate our large fundraising apparatus specifically toward their particular legal effort.
Right. Informational resources can be a very effective way to help that other class of people that I'm talking about.
I mean real help too. I don't just mean, here's a brochure, good luck. I mean,
but you have your focus. I mean,
there's the Innocence Project. I mean, we can be a node in a greater network.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. No.
And I'm happy to be that. And I'm happy also to help particularly the neglected and not just in your sympathetic case of crimes, but there's whole sets of crimes that people really hate in this country, which are actually difficult to get support for them at all. And maybe I'm thinking about certain kinds of pornography, or maybe I'm thinking about certain kinds of extreme drug dealers or something. I mean, still, if people doing innovative work, I'm thinking of Leonard Pickard here, the greatest LSD chemist of modern times. I would argue that actually what happened to him is more like a political conviction, and his imprisonment is more like a political imprisonment because he was such an innovator and now you have to be very careful about how you let the flavor of your organization change, how you characterize your efforts. But I'm for being completely open about someone's situation, the context of their conviction, and not ruling out anyone in their particulars. But we do still have to serve a greater public purpose about highlighting the particular political prosecutions of this country, and then really aiding those who need it most. And I would say Ross Ulbricht is a great example of an innovator, a true libertarian, someone who had political ideas and was specifically punished because of the success of the implementation of his political ideas.
That was a great answer, actually. No, it was great. Well, and let's see, we got less than a couple minutes till break. Heather, I want to get your thoughts generally. What's going through your head as we're talking about all this? What do you want to throw in on what we've just been discussing?
Well, the general takeaway is mutual aid and being able to take care of each other. As we decrease the size and scope of the government, there is a necessity to create the kind of society where we're taking care of each other. So so many of us are quick to say, cut this department, cut that program. The city shouldn't be doing this or that. Well, how are we going to fill that need? And what we see, not just with regard to what we're talking about here with legal defense as kind of a defense from the state, like on the front lines in that courtroom where the state is literally going after your freedom, your life, liberty, or property. But also in the general sense of creating the kind of free society that we all want and deserve, there needs to be this robust community of people starting nonprofits and even if they're small projects, a nonprofit that exists for 2 or 3 years, it fulfills its purpose and dissolves and people put their energy into something else. And when we say nonprofit, really it's just a mechanism, a vehicle of protection from taxation, right? So you can pool your money pre-taxes. But all of that's incredibly important. And it's great to see people deciding to take action and moving forward on what they find to be the truth and justice, especially when we're talking about people's lives just being thrown away and then put in a cage because of some idea. I mean, isn't that what this country was supposed to be founded on? Is that doesn't happen, especially systematically?
Absolutely. Well said. And we're coming to break. To sum up what Heather just said, we need more Cody Wilsons in the world to be there to fill the gap when the government goes away. And luckily, we've got at least one. So we'll be right back. Heather Fazio, Cody Wilson, stay tuned.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
For the longest time. For the longest. If you said that Bitcoin was my life, I would tell you. Show enough, show you right. What else can I do? I'm so inspired by you, and I'm just holding for the longest time. Once I knew my stocks and bonds were gone, I knew Satoshi Nakamoto was the one to come and save me. Encrypted money, brethren, and I'm just holding for the longest time.
Zaotong, check him out, Zaotong.com. We're talking with Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project and Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed. And in a few minutes, we're going to dive right in with Heather, what she's been working on with the Marijuana Policy Project and what we can expect in the upcoming legislative session at the beginning of this next year. But before we do that, I want to get a sense from Cody about his own court stuff and how that's been going. What's new with that, Cody? Give us you have any updates for us?
Only a few. I mean, we're done with our briefing. We're at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, and I think we are expecting that arguments will be scheduled the first week of June. I believe that's the most likely time they'll be scheduled. If not, then probably July. But I believe that we will finally get to fight in front of the court and have our arguments, and maybe I will invite people to come out. Of course, it's all public, so anyone can come anyway. But this will be in New Orleans, and we'll finally get to have out our legal fight in front of an actual appellate court instead of a disinterested district judge.
Fighting it's against the State Department. Right?
That's right. This is a lawsuit against the Department of State, Defense Trade Controls, and we're suing John Kerry. We're suing everybody, and we're saying we're saying how can a country with the First and Second Amendment not allow us to talk about Second Amendment protected articles on the internet?
It's a great question.
It's pretty simple stuff. I plan to win, but of course, defeat always finds a way.
The state always finds a way to bring defeat to.
But that's it. If the minute I hear something big, I plan to let everybody know, and I hope to see some support. If I'm not asking, but it'd be cool. I don't know how to handle it. It's too big at this point. It's just too big.
That's why we're here for you.
I just want to go and win. I don't want some I don't know, fully informed jury person being there, blowing it up or whatever. I just want to go and win. That's all,
I feel you. Get it settled, get the proper decision, really against the government and for freedom.
Folks, I got a show for you. If we win, I got a show for you, okay? So it's we don't need to have the show now. Let's just let me win, then we'll have the show.
They'll bring out the big guns, if you know what I'm saying. And then last thing real quick, anything new with specifically with Defense Distributed?
No, man. I got a cool thing that's launching probably at the end of the month, and I'll come on if you want to see.
Yeah, that'd be great. Excellent. Just to give you a heads up on what that is, if you've ever seen Star Trek, and
since it's April, I'm gonna give you a hint. It's a 3D printed bong.
Yeah,
just in time.
I was gonna make a joke, but I failed. What is that thing where it's gonna materialize out of thin air?
Okay.
That was the joke. It's a bad one. So let's get my joke. Well, Cody, thanks. We'll feel free to sit in with us. And
I'm sure to
discuss. Hang out. Excellent. Cody's hanging out with us, guys. We're cool. He likes us. He told me, he slipped me a note under the table. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, I said, I'll meet you outside. I'm going to kick your ass.
You are cool.
And he did it with the letters
Letter
U and
U,
R.
letter R.
That's when I knew it was sincere.
You guys are cool.
Anyway, I'm probably reducing the cool points by saying all that. But let's switch gears and focus on a lovely lady who's here in studio with us, Heather Fazio, old friend of ours, former, was it head of the Libertarian Party in Austin?
I was a staff member. I was the membership coordinator.
It felt like you were the head of it. It felt like you were like the Atlas holding it all together. Back in the day.
Well, certainly working with Pat Dixon's leadership, it felt that way sometimes. Working for a political party can be stressful. What was great is coming back here now, this used to be the office for the headquarters.
Right. We're sitting right like where your desk was, right?
Right. And that's how we all got to know each other. And so we saw each other a lot, which made me seem like I was doing more work than the volunteers were with that organization. They certainly carry the weight. County chairs, candidates, volunteers, all of that's really exciting. And to see the Libertarian Party doing so well with the great candidates running for office, their first televised presidential debate on Fox Business News last Friday night. The state convention's coming up in San Antonio this weekend. Jeffrey Tucker's going to be speaking during the gala on Saturday night. Really exciting to see that organization thriving.
I'm going to be going. We're going. Actually, yeah, we have press passes. We're going to be going. I'm going to.
Wait, where are we going?
To San Antonio.
Oh, when is it again? This weekend?
This weekend.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to go, but wait, when is it this weekend?
Friday and Saturday.
Are we going both? Well,
yeah, we don't have to go both days.
I'm gonna have to go Saturday.
I'm taking my. Okay, yeah, you come on up Saturday. I'm gonna be bringing a big jar of bath salts. So.
Nice. I want to see Jeffrey Tucker on bath salts. I want to see Cody Wilson. No, I'm just kidding.
I just want to do a line with McAfee.
That would be fun. Well, anyway, we're getting off topic. Sorry. Sorry, Heather. Heather puts up with us. She's such a sweet woman. Well, okay. So, I guess we'll probably be there. It should be fun, interesting. And of course, that's another fight for liberty is the Libertarian Party. A more general fight for liberty, obviously. You're also, are you still a member of TAG?
Of course. Absolutely. I love Texans for Accountable Government. That's where I got my experience, legislative experience and grassroots mobilization to do the work that I'm doing now with the Marijuana Policy Project. It's fantastic to see TAG thriving under the leadership of Justin Armand and the steering committee. So many great vehicles for liberty happening right now that we can all jump on an organization that we believe in that's doing work locally, because that is where we have the most power to change policies, is at the local and the state level. I got involved in about 2008, 2009, right when the bailouts were happening. And I was so anti George Bush and so anti-Republicans that I was kind of rooting for Obama. And then because the bailouts had happened, everything that was going on, right? The whole administration. And then Obama got in office. I'm like, wow, it really is the same story, because they bailed out the banks under both administrations. And we were making phone calls 1,000 to 1, all of us activists. They don't care what we think. And we didn't have any control over that whatsoever. Didn't matter, Democrat, Republican. The federal level is so hard to affect change, but we can do it at the local and the state level. And that's what's great about working with TAG and doing the work that I'm doing now.
Yeah, I think that's a point I want to stress, because it's so key, is it to the extent that political change is possible through the system. Of course, it's more possible at the local and state level, which in Austin happens to basically be the same thing, luckily, because they're both right here. But I'm surprised by how diluted a lot of people are who think that change can only happen at the federal level, or it only should happen at the federal level. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't, it'd be great if it did, but it makes no sense that it's more likely to when obviously the math is against it.
Yeah, if we can't get our cities and our states under control, how are we going to possibly get the federal government and then so many of the international affairs under control? It is all about local activism. And once you're able to do that and establish your relationships and your infrastructure as an organization at that level, possibly we're going to be able to create a free and prosperous America, which is something that hasn't been the case for decades, if not the whole last century.
Absolutely. And that's what I like about you, Heather, is you're a brilliant woman. You're a great speaker. You're dedicated to the cause of liberty. And you have experience in all these organizations that give you a plethora of different kinds of experience, but along with what we're saying, it gives you experience with organizations, as we've just mentioned, that work at a national, state, and local level. TAG is such a formidable group, and it's only been around a few years, and yet it's gotten so much done. And now you're with the Marijuana Policy Project. We've got a minute and a half till break. Tell us how you got involved with them and what they're all about.
Sure. Well, actually, I was representing TAG, Texans for Accountable Government, up at the DFW NORML conference they were hosting about cannabis law reform. NORML is the national organization for the reform of marijuana laws. And there I met the executive director of MPP, Rob Campia. It turns out I had already been referred to him, and so it was somewhat of an interview, and I didn't realize it at the time. Good thing he liked me. I passed.
It was probably better that way that you didn't realize
Less
it. You're
pressure.
More natural and all that, yeah.
Less pressure. But it was exciting because it was all very natural, and I feel very blessed to have been working within the movement. And I would love to see more fundraising happening for organizations that can hire people to be working towards the cause of liberty, which is something that is so desperately needed. People dedicating full time, in addition to all the great volunteers who put in time when they can after work, between, juggling the family and your small business, all of those things. It's important to have staffers and fundraising. So consider donating to a nonprofit or a political action committee of your choice, because those dollars go so far at the local level.
Absolutely. We're talking with Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project on the other side of the break, so stay tuned. Here on The Crypto Show, we'll be right back.
Forget the tanning booths, hours in the sun, and instant tan lotions. There's a much better way to boost your skin color, and it's really good for you. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in just a moment with a skin-sational tip.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Humans prefer a healthy glow, but not the kind from a beach or a bottle. This kind of glow comes from carotenoids. Carotenoids are red and yellow antioxidants found in foods like carrots, spinach, and pumpkins. Researchers say that people who eat lots of fruits and veggies have higher levels of carotenoids in their skin and a more yellow hue to their face, and people like it. Study participants were shown images of a face. The original one mimicked a suntan, and one mimicked carotenoid coloring. The carotenoid look was judged most healthy. So instead of basking in the sun, hit the salad bar. It's better for you, and you'll look healthier for it. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
About chemtrails.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction. Been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons. Been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian.
Welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show on this lovely Cannabis Month on the April 6th, 2016, a Wednesday. Here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And of course, we lead in with the bong sound because we're talking about marijuana legalization. We're talking with Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project. And just to clarify, we are kind of goofy clowns in the show, even when we're talking about matters that are very serious, that we take very seriously. And we take very seriously the need for cannabis legalization, just for all the reasons obvious and not obvious. So I just want to make that clear.
I don't even smoke weed. So.
And that's the thing, even for those who don't smoke it, there are plenty of libertarians who understand the need for legalizing it. So I want to make that clear. Just make it clear too that our guest Heather Fazio is entirely serious in her job and in her advocacy of legalizing marijuana or cannabis, in that she is far above stooping to our goofy antics level, way more professional than us.
Yeah, so don't take what we do as a reflection upon her.
Exactly. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So I just wanted to get that out there out of respect for Heather.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. I appreciate a good bong joke, though, as well. So
Good. Glad to hear it. Well, Heather, I want to get into the nitty-gritty of what's been going on with the Marijuana Policy Project and at the legislative level and what we can expect for this next year, because it's already coming up real fast. But before I get to that, I'm a libertarian. I've probably potentially tried the green stuff before in my life. I want it to be spinach indeed.
Okay. Clarifying.
I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. I want it to be legalized, just like it, because we all have the right to ingest as free adults what we want. And the fact of the matter is that marijuana is not just a harmless plant; it's a beneficial plant. But as libertarians, why do we fight so hard for marijuana? Is it really that important for the cause of liberty? I mean, come on, is it really?
Because it's the gateway to getting rid of the other drug laws.
Well, let Heather talk.
Okay. Here. Well, everybody has to choose. First of all, we all have to choose what we think is most important and focusing on projects. And if we all just focus on one thing, we'd be able to change the world overnight. So focusing on marijuana advocacy is not going to be for every libertarian. It's not going to be for everyone who agrees with it. However, it's not just the matter of self-ownership that you should be able to ingest what you want. It's a matter of how these policies are systemically affecting our society, and in particular, some communities disproportionately than others. And when we see 70,000 people being arrested just in the state of Texas every year, and not just for anything related to marijuana, we're not talking about distribution. We're not talking about trafficking. We're talking about 70,000 people in Texas every year arrested for simple possession of a substance that we know to be objectively safer than alcohol, tobacco, many of the prescription drugs.
All the legal stuff. How about all of the prescription drugs?
Right. So we know that. So there's that. So arresting all of those people, not only is it infringing on their liberty, right, from your perspective, but it's infringing on the criminal justice system's ability to fulfill its duty of justice. When our prosecutors are overburdened, our courts are clogged, law enforcement officers are distracted by statutory restrictions and mandates that they have to do, we're all missing out on a justice system that actually facilitates justice to victims of real crime.
Absolutely. That's a great response, and that's essentially what I was fishing for with that question. And I want to add on top of that it also creates a perverse incentive, probably among others, of a lot of municipalities, the police force as well as the city council inordinately focus on marijuana crime because there can be money in it. And so on top of just the mandatory stuff that you talked about, the money also diverts their attention to what is essentially non-crimes away from the more legitimate stuff, quote unquote, that they should be doing if we are to have a criminal justice system.
Absolutely. I mean, all the laws that we see on the books that aren't actually about a victim and a criminal are about revenue generation or about control of the population.
Exactly.
I mean, police are so terrified to give up marijuana possession being a crime because they wouldn't have a suspicion to search people's cars. They wouldn't have this to hold over people's heads. I mean, the prohibition of marijuana infringes on our right to travel freely, our right to be secure in our persons, so many parental rights. Based on this plant, kids get taken away from their families, thrown into the foster care system, which we know is a mess.
Yeah.
And they're becoming victims of this system for what?
And those kids become victims of all kinds of
abuse.
Drugs.
And
drugs.
that too.
That's the first thing they put them on.
Yeah.
Is,
the pharmaceutical drugs.
Psychotropic drugs and Ritalin and stuff like that. And the reason why they do that to these foster kids is because then the foster parent gets paid more, for one thing. So, it's all about the money.
Right. More perverse incentives that are created. Absolutely true. And then that just perpetuates a cycle of drug use and potentially other criminal activity. So it's nuts.
I mean, literally, the elementary schools are the biggest drug dealers for meth. They're the biggest meth dealers in the world.
Well, and in more of a kind of a grave perspective is they're numbing these children so that they can make it through this terrible process of their life, and then they're not better off by the time they get off of it. I mean, they call a lot of the drugs that calm kids down, they call them chemical restraints. And so it's not just in this fit of rage or something that they'll give a kid or somebody else something to calm them down, but it's something that is every day. It's a dose they take every day to calm them down, to sedate them, and they're not talking about the problems when they're sedated because they're not feeling them anymore.
Have you read the ingredients on Adderall? It's 4 amphetamines. It's 4 different methamphetamines are in Adderall.
So it's almost more potent than regular meth.
It's 4 different kinds of meth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's what they're giving to kids.
Absolutely. Not to dwell on this too long, but I want to add too, something implied by what you're saying is it's not just that they get messed up chemically from this stuff or get access to drugs or get traumatized. If you have psychological issues, if you aren't allowed to confront them, if you're just sedated against them, you will never grow as a person, and you're necessarily going to grow up probably with extreme issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that just makes society worse off, not least because it probably leads to more criminal activity.
And heart problems.
And all sorts of stuff. Yeah, physical problems as well. Well, we got 3 minutes till break, so let's switch gears. Well, tell us what the Marijuana Policy Project has been working on. And I know one of the big legislators who has been keen on liberty and in particular marijuana legalization has been David Simpson. So tell us what anything he's up to, what the policy project's up to.
Who's not a pothead at all by any means.
Right. So don't think that it's all potheads.
He has a completely different view of that.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about David Simpson. We have 3 minutes, so I can't get into on this side of the break everything that's going on. But David Simpson, for example, an outstanding champion of liberty in the state of Texas. I mean, he's like Texas's Ron Paul, and maybe better because he's passing bills at the state level, including the repeal of taxation on gold and silver, working on civil asset forfeiture reform. We all fell in love with him when he introduced the bill that restricted TSA from doing genital searching without a warrant. I mean, it's like, is this some novel idea that you should need a warrant to get into someone's private areas? That's where I fell in love with him. That's where I started working with him. A Christian conservative Republican from Northeast Texas who stands for liberty. He does what the right thing to do as he explains it, and he moves forward, and he takes on that kind of leadership. And what we saw last session was a bill to repeal marijuana prohibition entirely, not creating a tax and regulate structure, which is what most Texans would like to see, where it's similar to alcohol. But he looked at it from a libertarian perspective. Why do we need to create this huge state bureaucracy and more government in order to regulate a plant that was put here on God's green earth and that works with our body to serve patients?
Wasn't that, and that was like one of his stances, is how can God be wrong about marijuana?
Well, because it says in the Torah, it says every seed bearing plant will be yours for, food and what else. So according to the Bible, marijuana is perfectly legitimate from a Judeo-Christian perspective to consume.
Well, he said that God didn't make a mistake that government needs to fix.
That's for sure.
And that's exactly right here. I mean, we're talking about responsible use, and not abuse, right? We can condemn the use of marijuana or alcohol all we want. Should we put people in jail for it? Are they or society better off after that conviction and after that arrest? The answer is no.
Where is that? Where is justice in that? And where is reform or rehabilitation in that? Nowhere. That's supposed to be the point, but it's not the point, because if it were the point, that would actually be what happens, and it doesn't.
Right.
That's what's so crazy. Well, we're coming to break. Heather Fazio, we got one more segment with her. Not enough time, but we're going to hit the ground running, talking about what she's doing in the Marijuana Policy Project and what's going on legislatively. So stay tuned. It's going to get real.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment of the Crypto Show here on this lovely Wednesday, April 6, 2016, Cannabis Month, here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. In studio hanging out with us is Cody Wilson and our guest, Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project. Now, Heather, we were just discussing Representative David Simpson and all the things he has done or attempted to do for the fight for liberty. Quite an incredible guy. As you mentioned, I think it's not an exaggeration to say he is Texas's Ron Paul, although Ron Paul was already Texas's Ron Paul. But we are really looking forward to seeing what he can help get passed or introduced in this next session. But let's get into that. What, excuse me, has the
Except for David Simpson never asked me to vote for Ted Cruz.
That's true. Fair enough. And, to his credit and to I hate to say the discredit of someone else who did ask people to vote for Ted Cruz. It's unfortunate. But what is the Marijuana Policy Project working on right now, and what can we expect in the new legislative year?
Sure. Well, David Simpson's bill that we were talking about to repeal marijuana prohibition was one of about a dozen marijuana reform-related bills that were introduced last legislative session. We're working with a coalition called Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy. Our website is texasmarijuanapolicy.org. And we're working with a broad coalition of organizations that span from the usual suspects like the ACLU and the Libertarian Party, but also including states' rights organizations like the 10th Amendment Center, the Republican Liberty Caucus, recently founded organization Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition. Website is rampgop.com if y'all are interested in getting involved with that. We have a huge coalition of 27 different organizations all coming together working on marijuana law reform, helping to harness this grassroots momentum that we're seeing around the country and in Texas as well, where the people are ready to see marijuana prohibition repealed entirely or at least in part in order to reduce penalties for low-level possession, or at the bare minimum, let's get patients access to this medicine if they can benefit from it. So we saw all of those bills introduced during the last legislative session. We worked for a few of them. The big news out of last legislative session was the passage of the Compassionate Use Act. It was signed by the governor on June 1st, happened on my 30th birthday, which was exciting.
Wow.
Now, this bill isn't one that we pushed because it's so restrictive. It's only for intractable epilepsy and it's only low THC cannabis. But what I can tell you is in about a year and a half in the state of Texas, there will be dispensaries because of the passage of that legislation, which gives us an opportunity to go back to the legislature, talk about the other debilitating conditions that patients can see relief through cannabis medicine, and get them included as having access under this umbrella of the Compassionate Use Program.
And honestly, not just expanding the number of conditions, which is really important, but including THC in that combination drug, because am I right?
Absolutely. THC is a therapeutic component of the cannabis plant. For example, Texas has a huge population of veterans and many of them are suffering from PTSD. Why? Because we had put them on tour after tour after tour with the U.S. empire around the world, but don't get me started on that.
Am I right?
And they're coming home and they're suffering by being put on narcotics and other dangerous and addictive drugs. And many of them are using cannabis to be able to get through the night and not have night terrors, to be able to sleep. And THC is a critical component to that, as well as many other debilitating conditions conditions that we see. So getting THC, making THC available, of course, through a doctor's recommendation with this legitimate medical program. But also one thing that I'll note, but without getting too much into the weeds, there's a very serious legal problem with the way that our bill is written, our program is written in Texas. It requires doctors to prescribe cannabis. You cannot prescribe a Schedule I drug. The way that medical programs work in other states is that doctors recommend cannabis and they certify a patient through the state program. So we're going to have to get that legal issue fixed up with the next legislature in order to protect our doctors so that it can at least help people by allowing doctors to get them the medicine that they need.
So you're saying the way the law is written, they're committing a federal crime basically, or violating a federal law by prescribing cannabis under this new law.
Which is also a step to decriminalizing.
Yeah, our concern is that it puts them in jeopardy, whether it's legally or their livelihood. If the DEA revokes their ability to prescribe drugs because they're prescribing a Schedule I drug, they can't prescribe medicine to any of their patients.
Or they'll just simply refuse to prescribe the medicinal cannabis to these patients.
That's exactly right,
terrifying.
out of fear. So we have to change the legal problem. What we want to do next session is expand the program to include other debilitating conditions like cancer, PTSD, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, and ulcerative colitis. There's actually a study out of Israel recently in the last year that shows it's putting Crohn's disease in remission.
I personally know somebody who uses cannabis for Crohn's disease, and it absolutely, undeniably helps him significantly.
Absolutely. And when we have a safe and a legal market for patients, they're not just taking what they can get from whoever they can get it from. We're talking about tested products that are looked at for potency and for contaminants. Also processed cannabis so that you don't have to smoke it. Most patients don't like to smoke. It's an invasive process. They would prefer to vaporize or better yet, use infused products like edible products or infused drinks or tinctures and oils. All of that happens when the entrepreneurship and innovation is allowed by legalizing this market, bringing it into the light of day, rather than allowing criminals, cartels, gang members to be the ones that are controlling this market, which is exactly what happens with prohibition.
What about Abbott's statement that it'll never happen under his watch?
Well, he said that he doesn't favor expanding, and he doesn't really like decriminalization, and that legalization won't happen under his watch, which is fine. We know we have a lot of work to do, so let's work on a better governor in office.
He may have to reconsider when it comes time to be reelected.
He may have to. It comes down to the primary voters and who's involved in the Republican Party. I mean, having organizations like RAMP, Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, working with Republicans to talk about this from a conservative perspective. Because, we're used to kind of the left-leaning social justice reasons for changing these laws, which are valid and real. But also looking at it from a conservative perspective, how much money are we spending? Are we able to fulfill our duty to facilitate justice in our court systems? How about our border security in the state of Texas? Well, the violence on the border in our state and around the country along the border is very real. People are dying every day, and it is because of the power and the incentives we're giving to cartels and gang members through prohibition. With marijuana being such a significant portion of their profit, they profit more by the more violence that they use.
Yeah.
And so what are we doing? We're putting our people at risk because of our policies.
Yeah, absolutely. Perverse incentives. And, forget if you legalized it and you tax it, how much revenue you generate. I mean, I agree with David Simpson. I'd rather just full-blown decriminalized, nothing regulated. But the tax money you would save just from getting rid of the drug war apparatus. I mean, that's a huge windfall for the government if they did that. I also want to add real quick.
Using those poor canines by teaching them how to sniff out drugs.
I know, exactly. Yeah. Poor puppies. But, one thing I wanted to add, too, just before moving on, when THC is combined with other cannabinoids like CBD, the therapeutic effect is magnified. Right. So that's another reason. It's not just helping with nausea. It's not just helping with PTSD. Even the more sort of physical
inflammatory diseases that CBD is helpful for.
Yeah, exactly. So that should be kept in mind too.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, the cannabis plant is made up of different constituents. We call them cannabinoids, the different components of it. CBD and THC are the most talked about these days, and THC is the psychoactive element, which is why in Texas they decided it had to be low THC because, God forbid, a patient suffering from cancer feels good, right? Yeah. It's absurd. However, that's what they were afraid of, is that cannabinoid, which does employ that euphoric feeling. And so you're right. It's called the entourage effect. Sanjay Gupta coined that term. And it's, CBD works better when there is THC, because the plant is designed to work all together. We have an endocannabinoid system, which was discovered in the last 10 years, where we have cannabis receptors in our body. We generate cannabinoids within our own body. I mean, this plant has, the key to fit into our locks within our nervous system, within our brain, and it helps people. It's not just because patients feel better because they're high. It physiologically works with our bodies, and we are doing a very serious injustice to our people by denying medicine. I mean, how barbaric is
Amen.
that?
Very barbaric. Amen. God wants you to have this plant. God wanted us to have this plant. I mean, come on. Anyway, 2.5 minutes left, Heather. Wrap us out. Finish us off What else can we expect from MPP and other stuff that's going on?
Yeah.
And how can people get involved?
So the legislature convenes in January. The pre-filing period to introduce legislation is in November. That gives us, about 8 months to get prepared, draft legislation to make the compassionate use program more inclusive, which is what we spent a lot of time talking about tonight. But we also want to introduce a bill that reduces penalties for low-level possession so that there's no arrest, no jail time, and no criminal record associated with low-level amounts of marijuana. We talked about the 70,000 people arrested for simple possession. The criminal records that those people end up with hinder their access to education, employment, housing. They get their driver's license suspended for 6 months. And if you don't have a driver's license, it stays on your record. And if you apply for a driver's license, there's a 6-month waiting period. So we're talking about people's livelihoods here. And when 75% of those arrested are under the age of 30, we're really hindering the next generation. And what are we doing to the economy? What are we doing to the economy when the workforce is so limited? When people who are otherwise qualified to do good work are not able to because of that criminal record? It's a serious systemic problem that we have to nip in the bud. No pun originally intended. And we can do that here in Texas. We can change these laws. We saw great momentum during the last legislative session. We're going to continue building and moving on that momentum to put ourselves in an excellent position to pass meaningful legislation when the legislature convenes next year. Our website is texasmarijuanapolicy.org. For those that are interested in donating, please donate to this great cause. If you're interested in volunteering, meeting with your legislator, if you're a patient or if you have a personal story of an arrest or a family member's arrest that you want to share, it's those personal conversations, that relationship building that helps to give them the confidence that they need to have that conversation when the opportunity arises with their colleagues.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Heather Fazio, thank you so much. Heather Fazio of the Marijuana Policy Project. What's the website again?
TexasMarijuanaPolicy.org.
Awesome. And Texas for Accountable Government is what?
TagTexas.org.
There you go.
And the Libertarian Party of Texas, LPTexas.org.
There you go.
Since we talked about them earlier.
No, absolutely. And Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed. What's the American Black Cross website again? Blackcross.org. Cody Wilson, Heather Fazio. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.